five, four, three, two, one. We have ignition. In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at freedomtalkradio.net.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
You can see the little light there. You can see the little rechargeable battery that's in it. I use those to light up some of the rooms here in the house. You can see that. You can see how bright this thing is, and a few of these things scattered around the room are more than enough to light up a room adequately. Well, a couple of days ago, I was up at the local auto parts store here in town. Let me check this real quick to make sure that everything is running correctly. I see the audio stream is up on the air, and we're going to check and see if the video stream is actually working, and it is, because I can see myself on the monitor, so I know the video stream is working, which is good. Now, we use these little solar lights to light up rooms, and I was up at the local auto parts store when I came across something absolutely phenomenal that is blinding me right now, and that is this. Check this thing out. As you know, all of a sudden it got a lot darker, didn't it? As you know, here, I'll go like this, that way you can see me again. As you know, we use a 500-watt studio light here in the studio to light up the show. Well, that consumes a lot of electricity, and it's hot, and it is extremely bright. So I'm always looking for ways to light the studio here so I can do the shows so it looks halfway decent without using a lot of electricity. Because when you're using a lot of electricity, well, we got the smart meter, and of course it's like NSA to NSA, NSA1 to NSA2. He's on the air right now. The electrical usage just went up like crazy. Make sure that you start interfering with his internet connection so he can't do a show. And stuff like that happens. Well, I've got the cure for that, which is this right here. This little thing, this little little red thing that I have right here is an LED light. This thing, believe it or not, will light up a room bright enough that you can read from the other side of the room. It takes two AAA rechargeable batteries. And, of course, I have one of my solar pathway lights that we use to light the rooms. I have that modified so that it will recharge the batteries in this. So this is a little solar-powered studio light. Now, check out how bright this thing is. Hopefully I won't burn out the webcam here. Look at this. This is how bright this thing is. This thing is absolutely amazing. If you look at this thing without having sunglasses on, or look directly into it from just a few feet away, you'll see after images for a half an hour, which is what I'm seeing right now because I just flashed it in my eyes. And there you go. It just sits up next to the camera, and we have a low-powered studio light that doesn't cost me anything to run, which is absolutely fabulous, if you ask me. Those of you that are watching on the video side of the program have seen this. This episode, of course, will be up on YouTube, not only the audio version, but the video version. Now, one other little bit of business that I want to get out of the way is I also do a little show called Bill Zam's Half-Baked Do-It-Yourself Projects. And my next half-baked do-it-yourself project is going to be using my Android tablet. This is a Lenovo tablet, formerly IBM. This tablet, this is actually the fastest computer in the house. This is a quad-core. It has a graphics engine like you would not believe. I can watch just about anything in HD. It is amazing. It's great for games, browsing the internet, and all kinds of stuff. I use it for as a music player. I can actually hook this in through the soundboard so that you can hear I can use this as the music player if I wanted to. It also has the Spreaker app on it, so when I'm on the road somewhere, doesn't matter where I go, as long as I can get a Wi-Fi connection, I can, in fact, I just have a portable hotspot, a 3G hotspot. I can use this with the Spreaker app to do my show anywhere in the world. It's a pretty amazing device. However, there's one problem. This little port right here, I don't know if you can see it there, right there, that little port, that is what's called a micro USB port. Now, the people that designed the micro USB port, not the manufacturer of the tablet or any other tablet, the people that designed and implemented the micro USB connections should be sued because they are defective. Every single one of them is defective. I have one of them on a camera, and it is defective. I have one of them on this. It is defective. I have one of them on a cell phone. It is defective. Just do a search for micro USB port not working. So my project is this. I'm going to take a micro USB connector like this. I'm going to strip off the micro USB male connector on it, strip that down, bare the wires, open this thing up, and I am going to wire it directly into the circuit board so that in the end what I'll have is I'll just have a little USB connector hanging off the back of it like this that will clip onto the back like that so that you can use it as a, still use it as an Android without any problems, and it'll work. I'll be able to hook it up to computers again and anything else, because right now you've got to plug this thing in. You have to have a paper clip hooked up to it, and you have to have it pushed off one way, and it is absolutely horrible. So that is going to be my next project, and I, of course, will be shooting a video about that. And unfortunately, my studio light is leaving after images in my eyes, even wearing the sunglasses. This thing's way too bright. I'm going to have to reposition it for the next show. At any rate, on with the show. Let me do this. Okay, very good. Things are actually working. And there we go. There are the show notes for tonight's show. And since I probably won't appear on camera anymore, I'm going to turn off this stupid light that's blinding me. There we go. That's a lot better. Now, last week, I was talking about the issue out there in Nevada with Cliven Bundy and his ranch, his cattle ranch. And I have, of course, been doing a lot of research. And the past couple of days, there have been a couple of discussion threads over at one of my favorite sites, godlikeproductions.com, about this particular situation. Now, my first, I guess you could call it anti-government / freedom blog that I created was, I think in 2008 is when that was got up and running. And that was my first attempt. And that was when Surrounded by Idiots was started. And I developed that site specifically for Surrounded by Idiots, this show. The first article, the very first article that I ever did was about Wayne Hagee. He was a rancher out west that was harassed, harangued, and sued by the federal government about his ranch. And he sued the United States of America, went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he won. So that was the very first article that I put up on that website. So I have been aware of these issues for quite some time. So yesterday and the day before, there have been a couple of videos of Mr. Hagee up on Godlike Productions. In fact, the very last interview that he did before he died. Like many others, I believe that the government is complicit, at least a little bit, in killing him prematurely because of the stress they put the man under, but they don't give a shit about that one way or the other, so it is what it is. Now, tonight's show is going to be mostly about the Bundy Ranch situation, except for that little bit at the beginning there, and I'm sure somebody's going to complain about that. And it's more of a basic understanding of what is going on. Now, when you learn the real reasons, when you learn the behind-the-scenes facts, you will understand exactly why this totalitarian style of government can and will control everything you say, what you do, where you go, and point out to you along the way that you are committing some crime and that you have to pay for what you've done, even though you haven't done anything wrong. You see, the central government decides that for you, whether or not you've done anything wrong. So they make sure with all of these regulations, all of these laws, and everything else that, number one, you have to get permission from them in order to be able to do something. In other words, they've finally got it all rigged up. Here we go. Oh, got the light back on there. They have it all rigged up now. The system is rigged so that you have to seek permission for just about anything that you want to do on your own property, in your own home, any business activity, or anything else. And they use this for a purpose. If somebody like me starts spouting off a little bit too much and gets a little bit too much attention, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and find something that he's done wrong, because obviously he's done something wrong. We're going to prosecute him for it until you give up. You're going to go broke fighting him because they got deeper pockets. That's how that works, in case you didn't realize it. There's the screen. Properly administered, of course, this will cause all sorts of problems for this commentator, me, your friendly host, Bill Zam. But I will point out that they couldn't quite kill me the last time, and I don't expect that they'll have much more success this time either. That's because I have something they don't, and I'm going to observe it on Sunday, 20 April 2014. And the clever amongst you will be able to figure out exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the research that I did, I watched probably a good 8 hours of video on various websites with various bits of information. I was able to transcribe some of it word for word. Other parts I had to do additional research on. And all of the links for what I'm going to talk about here are going to be up on freedomtalkradio.net, freedomtalkradio.net, under one of the posts probably called Surrounded by Idiots, April 19, 2014. So you'll be able to see the show notes and also get to the links for all of the sources that I've used. So everything that I've researched, watched, listened to, and read about is all of the quotes and paraphrases and everything else. They're spread out over a period of about 6 to 8 hours. So gathering all of those sound clips was essentially pointless, so I just basically transcribed everything. I have access to a very advanced machine transcription software program that I use, so just about any video. In fact, anybody that does a show out there that wants to use audio clips and have the transcription for those audio clips, just use the Contact Us button up there at the top of the freedomtalkradio.net website and inquire about getting some help doing that, and I'll see if I can have that stuff transcribed. It only takes about 5 minutes for a 20-minute video clip for that software to do the work. So, anyways, all of this that I'm going to talk about tonight, all of this goes back to something that I have been talking about for quite some time, since 2008, and that is this. And this is going to sound like a broken record for regular listeners, but we get new listeners and viewers every week, so I'm going to go over it again. We, in fact, had a coup in 2008 when we elected a of our own free will as a country, a liberation theology president where all things, whether your private land, whether your business, whether your children, your water rights, your mineral rights, your access to public lands, where all of these things belongs to the government, and they shall decide what rights you have. These coup plotters are intent on and carrying out the dismantling of the United States as we know it. It grinds them to no end that we have a Second Amendment allowing us to protect ourselves from what they are trying to do. This is the primary source of the gun restrictions that they are getting away with right now. Mark my words, read my lips, and pass this on to your friends and enemies alike. When they first set up the free speech zone at a protest area, the first time they do this, such as at the Bundy Ranch, and the citizens, and it matters not one whit if they are billed as the militia or not, and the citizens show up to mock such a lawless behavior by a government agency, it represents a tipping point. You got that? That's what we witnessed last week, is a tipping point. With apologies to both the Sausage King of San Francisco, who apparently can't do what I'm doing right now on a regular basis, and the latest member of the mainstream, lamestream media, judging by his loss of resolve, the Beck, there is something that everyone seems to be missing. Remember this: the word in the Second Amendment is militia and well-regulated. However, it says nothing about the government doing the regulation, does it? Here is the actual text from the Constitution. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Nothing in there about who does the regulating, is there? And don't forget that the sitting president sees this as a set of negative liberties for the government. So by his own public point of view, the government is cut out of the regulated part of the deal. The simple answer is that we, the people, do the regulating. So let's move on to the specifics of the current range war, which has been ongoing since the late 1970s, when the environmental movement began its rise to power. Hold on one moment while I check something. Okay. Everything appears to be going well on the video streaming server. Yes, it does. Okay. So the specifics of the current range war. It's been this has been going on since the late 1970s, when the environmental movement began its rise to power. It's also about the same time that some bright boys somewhere in some pointless think tank came up with global warming, which is now climate change, to aid the activities that are going on. The range and water wars, if there is such a thing as settled law, this is it. These what is going on with Clive and Bundy and all the rest of the ranchers. This is happening to more people than just on the Bundy Ranch. Trust me on this. You see articles all the time about people being harassed by the government for what they do on their own property. We're going to get into that a lot. The range and water laws are the most settled and established law that there is on the planet. It doesn't get any more settled than this. Rangelands and private rights on the so-called federal lands has been brought out in the Supreme Court decision Hagee versus the United States, which brought out the lawful basis of backing up the fact that these are not public lands out west, but are lands to which rights and claims of others attach throughout the West. That there is an inheritable right to use his lands by virtue of prior appropriation water doctrine, which rules, now get this, which rules in 11 western states, because these lands were settled under old Spanish Mexican law, not Anglo-Saxon law. So, for those of you out there that are doubtful, petulant, outspoken, bitching, whining, or complaining that this Bundy guy has broken the law. It's the law, and that's that. And I will point out that, during the civil rights era, when people refused to sit in the back of the bus, that was the law back then, too. When people refused to be segregated anymore, that was the law, too. So I will point that out for those of you that say that. Also, the western states, the 11 western states, were settled under the old Spanish-Mexican law, not Anglo-Saxon law. And there's been a war going on about this since the Civil War was over, about whether the eastern states and the creditors of the United States have control over these lands, which they do not. Let me explain further. The issue is whether or not those that have loaned the United States money are attempting to dominate the West, or whether private property rights in the West will be protected. The battle is ongoing today, and that was the central issue in Hagee versus the United States. Here's the deal. The range and water laws are the best settled law in the world. Do some research. You will find out that that is true. There is no question whatsoever about the property rights in the Western Range states regarding land and water. This goes back to the Act of July 26th of 1866, when the United States adopted the old American Spanish law in the West, which goes back to the Treaty of Guadalupe at the end of the Mexican War. It goes back to the surrender of Mexico. It goes back to the old Mexican law, which was based on the old Spanish law codes, one of the greatest law codes of the so-called modern world. It goes back to Partius, and you can carry it on back to the Justinian Code of Rome, and you can carry it back all the way to the Old Testament of the Bible. The range and water law is the most settled law in the world, period, going back millennia. We have to understand also the environmental movement, and that's about the whole story in itself. It's not climate change. It's not global warming. Those people, the environmentalists, are the useful idiots, the tools of the ones that are really behind this. All of this climate change and global warming nonsense, all of it is nothing more than a distraction. Look at the right hand while the left hand does something else. These big insurance companies and the banks are loaning millions and millions of dollars to people to buy these western ranches, and at the same time, you've got the Forest Service, the environmentalists, and the BLM doing everything they can do to make sure they can't survive. And one of the reasons why you occasionally get one of these coming to the mainstream news or being covered by the alternative news, because it's going on all the time, is in the case of the Bundy Ranch. It has been in his family for generations. So there is well-established rule of law there. In the case of Wayne Hagee, they went up against somebody who was extremely intelligent, extremely educated, self-educated, and knew exactly what the hell he was doing. And they bit off far more than they can chew, just exactly as they did in the Bundy incident. But most of the time, the BLM and the Forestry Service and the environmentalists, they come rolling on in, and they just start harassing people until they throw up their hands, go broke, and leave. So these big insurance companies and the banks are loaning millions and millions of dollars to people to buy these western ranches, and at the same time, the Forest Service, the environmentalists, and the BLM are doing everything they can to make sure they can't survive. Now, you have to understand this from the banking and insurance company and financial point of view. These institutions know that these grazing allotments in the West are private property, and that someday they will have to be recognized as private property. What their objective is to get as much money loaned on these properties as possible and get as much paper spread out so that they have a claim on these properties. Not because of the land itself, but because what's under the land, the water and rare earth minerals. They'll sell it to somebody, loan them the money. This is what happens to the properties, to these ranches. They sell it to somebody. They loan them the money, knowing the guy can't make it, because as soon as they buy it, the Forestry Service, the BLM, and the environmental groups are going to just show up on the doorstep and start in on them, and they're going to go broke. Basically, what they're doing is hiring managers of the property, and when one goes broke, there will be somebody else to step in, and he'll go broke also. Now, I've got some experience with this. I'm going to read a little sidebar here on the side of the screen. For those of you watching the video side of the show, hopefully you can see it. It is this right here. I have actually got some experience with this in this area where I live in the Ann Arbor area. We had a corporation called the Borders Book Company. You may have gone to one of their stores, Borders Booksellers. The old Borders Brothers Booksellers was famous for this type of activity around here. They would hire a CEO, let him run the company for a while, usually somebody with no publishing experience, and they'd come up with some of the most idiotic ideas until the company bled a few more $1 million. Then they'd get rid of that person and replace him with another person who would continue the process. They bought out other booksellers and used them as cash cows. That is a quote from a employee meeting at the old Borders that I trust this person implicitly. They bought out other booksellers and used them as cash cows to fund the final solution, the destruction of the Borders bookstore chain. There's a lot more behind that, but that is basically what happened there. So I've got some experience with this. Now, the environmentalist will make sure that these ranchers go broke because they're working hand in hand with the Forestry Service and the BLM. They will make sure of that, and somewhere in the future, when they feel like they have a secure enough claim on the Western livestock industry, then the environmentalist will be pushed aside by the insurance companies and the banks and the military-industrial complex, and they will be cut out. Now, why the military-industrial goons? Simple. Rare earth minerals. Corporations will get the water, or if you're the betting type, odds will favor the federal debt holders, and everything else from the mineral rights to other natural resources will be divvied up. And again, I have some experience with that because there is a major corporation that made its initial claim making candy. You might know the name of this corporation. Well, up there at close to Traverse City in Michigan, they have a water bottling plant. Now, they did it especially cleverly because you're not allowed to, here, my little fake map of Michigan right here. This is what Michigan looks like. It's a mint. They have their little bottling plant right up here. And, of course, the Great Lakes surround the state of Michigan. You're not allowed to pull water out of the state of Michigan. So here's a clever thing they did. They moved their wells about 5-10 miles inland, sunk a well, and they're still pulling water out of the Great Lakes. Hundreds of thousands of gallons a day, bottling water. So this corporation has basically purchased the Great Lakes water here in the state of Michigan. Not a very nice thing. I think it contributes to the lowering of the level of the Great Lakes, which we have been experiencing for many, many years now. Because when you're pulling out a 250,000 gallons of water a day, I don't care how big the lake is, eventually the lake is going to start to go down. So the corporations will get the water, and the military-industrial goons will get the rare earth minerals, and of course this will all be connected to the debt holders of the United States, and the environmentalists in the end will be made out to be the fools that everyone thought they were to begin with, and the banking and financial institutions will own the Western livestock industry, just like they own all of the vegetable farms and everything else. around the country. Meantime, I'm starting to get excited, and I need to calm down a little bit. In the meantime, the carbon tax climate change debacle will roost on everyone else's shoulders to redistribute the wealth that was initially redistributed from the middle class to the lower non-working classes, which will now go to the government under the guise of regulating the final holders of the land, which will not be you or I, nor will we see any profit from that. I've heard all of this confirmed from sources available to me, as far as I can tell, and I've seen it work out in the Hague versus the United States, which was decided in the Supreme Court about these property rights in the western United States. It was settled years ago, but the lawless nature of the current form of totalitarian government that we have just ignores the court decisions, and they don't like that anyways. Virtually, the entire Western ranch industry is under enormous economic pressure, economic assault from the agencies working through environmental policy for the very purpose of driving the properties into the hands of the government or the surrogates of the government, read the corporations. I'm talking about the corporate United States. If you go into any law library and look up United States, you will find that when United States is written in all capital letters, that's the United States that deals in commerce. The United States that deals in commerce is bankrupt. We all know it. You know it, and I know it. They're bankrupt. In order to stay alive, they have to have more assets to borrow against. The only way they can get more assets is to take assets from the people. If the United States just came out, if the government just came out, if Obama, okay, let's say you're watching Dancing with the Stars one night, and all of a sudden there's the little presidential music, and Obama comes on and says, you know what, we're broke. There's no gold to back the debt. We have no assets to back our debt, and we're going to take all the private property. And that's it. You're watching Dancing with the Stars again. If the government came out and said, we're broke, there's no gold to back the debt, we have no assets to back our debt, and we need to take all private property, there would be such an uprising that it would be a revolution against the government. Instead, they'll say something like, we have to take so-and-so's property to protect clean water. We have to take so-and-so's timber operation to protect an endangered species. We have to take the Bundy Ranch to protect a pristine habitat for the turtles, and the general public in the urban areas that doesn't understand any of this stuff will buy it because, well, it's for the public good. And, you know, too bad about those rancher and timber guys and all the rest of them, but after all, this is for the public good, and so they don't get excited about it. They won't get excited about it until their own properties get taken under the eminent domain laws, and then the ugly reality of it becomes obvious. Everyone knows the truth, whether they realize it or not, because you have things like I'm hearing a bird in the background. Very interesting. I don't know where that's coming from. There are no other microphones set up except the one in the studio. Wait a minute, the studio window is open, so that's where we're hearing the birds from. There's a bird sitting outside of the studio window, oddly enough. Everybody knows, whether they realize it or not. If you have a mortgage, you don't own that property or that house. Everyone knows the truth that their own property has already been taken. It doesn't belong to them unless they have a line of title to it going back to the original treaties for that land. Because the city can come in and say, well, you know, somebody wants to build a factory and they need your land to do it. So eminent domain, move on out. And they're going to say, no, wait a minute, that's my house. That's my property. I paid for that property. They're going to say, sorry, eminent domain. And then you're going to go to court, and the judge is going to say, well, you have to provide a line of title to it right back to the original treaty for the land. And you're not going to be able to do it. Hardly anybody can. And most people will not have anything like that will stand up in court. This is happening not only to protect the assets of the debt, the national debt, but for the resources as well. Because resources are worth far, far more than the land or whatever you decide to put on that land. It's the water, the minerals, the natural resources under that land that they're after. Because that is the real asset. Now about the water. You know that a lot of the stuff that's happening on the Bundy Ranch is about the water, because it's catch-22. The BLM and the Forestry Service restrict the ranchers from getting to the water, and then they turn around and say, well, you know, since you're not using the water, you can't use the land anymore, because in order to be able to use the land, you have to be using the water, and we're not going to let you use the water, so you can't use the land anymore, so we're going to rustle your cattle and sell them. How do you like them apples? So, as we all know, that is a lot of what this boils down to. Water is essential for life of any kind, and fresh water is becoming more and more scarce as the world's population gets bigger and bigger. We all know this. This is not any big new news. And when you talk about the environmental groups, what is their interest in these cases? You have to get a much broader view of what's going on in the world. You have to look at it much more broadly than the narrow focus of these crazy environmentalists and these crazy things they do, and that's what makes people think that we can reason with them, because anybody can understand that that's crazy and so contrary to common sense. That's not true. No, you have to look at the broader picture. Now, we'll put it in this context. The concept is so simple. Once you understand it and have any sense of world history at all, it all comes together. It gels so obviously that you can't miss it. It's the kind of thing that a judge would say that they take judicial notice of. It's the most basic common sense. What the judge means is that everybody understands that it's basic common sense. There's no reason to talk about it. It's like a book on astronomy where the first chapter says the sun rises in the east. Everybody knows that. It's common sense. Everybody on the planet knows that the sun rises in the east. That is what is called judicial notice in our common lives. We all know that if you drop an object, it's going to fall down. That's judicial notice in our own lives. We all know that the sky is blue. We all know that water is wet. We all know these things. So there's no reason to talk about it. Now, you have to understand where the environmentalists came from, why they're here, and what is the tie-in between them and the breakdown of the Bretton Woods Agreement in the late 1960s. Then you have to go and look at the tie-in between the breakdown of the Bretton Woods Agreement and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society and the Vietnam War going on all at the same time. You have to understand what is the relationship between that and the externalization of the debt, and why that is a debacle, because it has led us into bankruptcy. Why did that demand for the creation of the environmental movement, and for that matter, the entire global warming, or as they now call it, the climate change, and how they are trying to control virtually everything, and for what reason? That's what you have to understand. What is the purpose of what they are doing, and who is acquiring the assets of the United States of America? This goes back to tie in to Roosevelt calling in the gold in 1933, and the fact that we had to collateralize our gold debt-backed instruments. Now we have no more gold to give out. We have collateralized the debt with natural resources of the United States, which is tied to the externalization of the debt when we said foreigners could hold our debt, the biggest mistake we ever made. This is all an interesting story, but you have to understand that it all comes together when you understand what the environmental movement is all about. Which brings me to about 2/3 of the way through the show now, and land management. Because, and all of this stuff is what I've learned over the past 24 hours or so, watching all of these videos, reading these articles, reading Supreme Court blogs, and reading people's opinions on this is an understanding. One of the understandings that I gained is land management. There are two types of land management. Let's get into those. You know, this light kind of makes me look spooky when I have it set so close to me, doesn't it? Now, there are two broad approaches to land management. One is described as intensive land management, and the other can be described as extensive land management. For an example, an intensive land management type of thing is something that is like a small row crop farmer or maybe a flower grower. It's intensive land management. And in many parts of the world where arable land is scarce, Japan, China, where every bit of arable land has to be taken advantage of, that is called intensive land management. Every little bit of soil that will grow anything is nurtured and cultivated and fertilized and taken care of with meticulous care to get the maximum production possible out of that land. In other words, I know a bit more about this than I thought I did. Just reading that here during the show. My family, when I was a kid, hang on a second, let me do this. There we go. We'll move the LED studio light that uses virtually no electricity, that runs on solar power, back where it belongs, next to the camera. My family, when I was a kid, we lived in a little town called Alden, New York, western New York. It is in the snow belt there. The moisture comes straight down Lake Erie and dumps in western New York, and it snows and snows and snows and basically snows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from about November to about this time of the year, about April. You get massive amounts of snow. I've got pictures of myself as a little kid with my kid brother, sitting on top of street lights because the snow is piled up so high, and that's just regular everyday life there. At any rate, we had a world-class, literally a world-class rose garden. We had, trying to think now, we had 6 or 7 rose beds. Each rose bed had probably about 500 rose bushes in it. We were testers for Jackson and Perkins roses. In fact, after I got married, I was still in contact with Jackson and Perkins, and I was a rose tester for several years as an adult. A little rose garden that I had. We tested new breeds of roses that came out. In fact, Queen Elizabeth was one of the rose varieties that we tested. My stepfather was English, and he suggested the name Queen Elizabeth, and that was a name that they got for the rose. There's another rose. I was a little kid. I had my own little teeny tiny rose garden set up by the where the crops were, the edge of the crop field. And there was one that I tested, and for some reason I've always liked the name Ginger. And I suggested the name Ginger, and guess what? Rose is called Ginger. Every time I go to buy roses, I always buy one of the old ginger stock and plant that rose because it means a little bit to me. In order to grow roses at that level, you have to do what's called intensive land management. The soil has to be just right. The pH and the acidity in the soil has to be just right. You have to have just the right nutrients, just the right number of earthworms. You can't have any grubs. The soil temperature has to be just right. The mounding has to be just right. The watering has to be just right. It's intensive land management is what that means. When you have a vegetable garden at home, you you put down your lime to sweeten the soil, and break down any compost or anything that you've put in there. You put in your homemade compost, you fertilize it, you rototill it, you make sure the soil is perfect to put the seeds or the seedlings in, and you grow your vegetables, and you get a pretty good bumper crop every year. That's called intensive land management. That is what is done in places where there is not good arable land, as well as people that have small gardens and whatnot. In other words, in intensive land management, you change and manipulate what you can, whatever you can. You change and manipulate whatever you can with the natural environment to get the maximum production out of the natural environment. Set up a greenhouse to start your seedlings or something, or grow your vegetables in. That's a form of intensive land management. Now, in extensive land management, such as on the Western ranches, the whole theory of management is exactly the opposite. It gets turned around completely. In extensive land management, you try not to change the natural environment, and that's where all of these issues gel together as far as the ranchers go. Because they use extensive land management. Think of it this way. You have a cow with a calf. The cow knows what types of grasses to eat for the calf. It knows where to get the water and how much water to drink. It knows where to go to get certain food. It knows where it lives. It knows where to go, how long it takes to walk there, and how to take care of the calf. The ranchers know that you're not going to go out into the range where the cattle are feeding. You're not going to go out there and mow the grass or plant seed or anything else. It is what it is. You leave the land alone. You let the land be. You let the natural environment of the earth take care of the land. You try not to change it. You have to work with and adapt to the natural environment and go with it where it takes you. That's one of the ways that I actually like to do things. A vegetable garden, yeah, okay, you got to do intensive land management. But as far as a yard goes, I'm not the kind of person that likes to have a super pristine golf course-like green yard. I like to have a lot of trees, a lot of shrubs, and let the yard be natural. Just let nature take care of the yard. Yeah, maybe do some watering and stuff like that. But other than that, let nature take care of the yard. So you have to do as little maintenance on it as possible. You adapt to the environment on the western ranges rather than try to change it. And the Forest Service and BLM, with their rules and regulations, would have nothing to regulate if they weren't trying to force the ranchers to change the natural environment. And so, while they say we're environmentalists and we're adhering to the environmental precepts, they're in fact doing the exact opposite with the regulations, and then charge the ranchers with violations when he says, wait a minute, that won't work. The end idea is to drive the ranchers and the cattle industry broke. This is so they can control the land, the environment, and the resources of that land. That's how all this ties together. And that is essentially all that is going on with all of this. I have some other stuff that I had on the show notes that I probably could cover, but honestly, I don't think it's worth the time to cover any other subjects on this particular episode. Of course, everything's going to be up on the website, freedomtalkradio.net, as in the show notes post for this evening, which will be up immediately after the show. The video side of the show also will be uploaded to YouTube along with the audio side, so that you can see me with my unbelievably cool LED studio light because that thing rocks. I love that little light. It only costs like $10. It's got a couple little NiCad batteries that I charge up with my little pathway lights. It doesn't cost anything. And the NSA guys are going there, I don't think he's doing a show tonight because he's not using that 500 watts of power to power his studio lights. So, at any rate, that's about it for the show. On a more personal note, for those of you that are actually still watching or listening, pardon me, of course, like any high-end talk show, it would not get on the air without adult beverages, obviously. For those of you that know about my long-term health problems, specifically with my voice and everything else that has been going on with me over the past couple of years, where a while back I died twice during medical tests. My heart stopped, my blood pressure went to 0 during medical tests. I was sick for a long time. I had an extremely bad lung infection. My lungs filled up with fluid. I was off work for about 6 months. It was not a happy camper type of thing. I have developed nerve pain where I wake up about every 45 minutes at night in the most god-awful damn pain you have ever experienced. And you got to move around, and get rid of the pain and go back to sleep. It's not nice. I, as such, couldn't really do much. Didn't really have a lot of energy. Things were messed up. My body was basically shutting down slowly but surely. My doctor wanted me to go to a physical rehab, go to yet another specialist. And I will point out that over the past 10 years or so, I have spent about $15,000 of my own money on specialists, and they have found virtually nothing wrong with me according to their tests. But using my medical records and some clever research and knowing how I feel and what my symptoms actually are, even though they don't show up on tests, I've been able to pinpoint exactly what I have. And physical rehab I'm not going to do because a couple of times, the first time they screwed me up, the second time they screwed me up, and the third time they screwed me up even worse, so I'm not going to do their physical rehab. So I figured, what the hell, I'll try exercising and see what happens. Now, I used to be a ultra-marathoner. I used to run 20 miles a day, 6 days a week. You can ask my ex-wife about that. I have witnesses because I was training for the ultra-marathon in Death Valley. I really, really wanted to run that. I would love to run that ultra-marathon. That would be about the coolest experience of my life. That would be almost the number one thing to knock off my bucket list. It would be to run in the ultra-marathon in Death Valley. Unfortunately, my body is too worn out for that. I have shin splints and everything else. So I dragged out the old stepper that my wife had before we met each other and started using the stepper and dragged out my weight bench and all my barbells and weights and everything else and, started exercising. When I started, I was 262 pounds. My doctor said, I'd like to see you lose 10 pounds in a year. It's like, 10 pounds in a year? How in the hell are you going to do something like that? Talk about your gradual slope. Good Lord. What, are you going to drop like 50 calories a day off your food intake or something? That is just insane. So I started out slowly, lifting light weights and doing some on the stepper. Maybe probably 100 steps I could do when I started out. It was a pretty strenuous exercise. One thing I learned is for sure my heart rate cannot go above 115 to 120 or I will pass out like a fainting goat. So I have to wear my heart monitor and everything while I'm doing the exercises. The end result is in the past 3 months since I started doing this. I've gone from 262 to 235 pounds. I am now on the stepper, the equivalent of approximately 7 miles a day running, because I go very quickly and very hard on the stepper. And I have pretty much gotten up to my old weightlifting limits when I was doing my ultramarathon training. So I've gotten rid of the gut. I feel much better. I have much more energy. But I'm still waking up every 45 minutes at night in the most god-awful pain you could ever imagine. So, not really fixing anything, just making me feel a little bit better during the day. And I feel better about myself because now when I go to the Walmart, I'm the skinniest person in there. Because all the rest of these fat asses. Never mind. At any rate, that's tonight's episode. And always remember, when you're out and about, 2 things I want you to remember. First of all, always wear your sunglasses and a baseball cap because that messes with the facial recognition software. And we're getting lighter and lighter every day. The sun's up longer and longer every day as we get towards summer, which means one thing: school's going to let out, which means the kids aren't going to be on the school buses, and they're going to be out and about playing. They're going to be going down to the park, flying their kites, riding their bikes, running around willy-nilly like kids do. So when you're driving down the road, you need to watch out for the kids because they're playing ball, they run out in the street, they're running around doing stuff. Parents half the time aren't watching them because they're either at work or busy in the house doing whatever the hell it is parents do these days. And you got to be careful. You got to be careful around the kids, because every small town, every city, there's kids running around all over the place. Because folks, remember this: when a car hits a car, that's an accident. When a car hits a child, that is a tragedy. And that is tonight's episode of Surrounded by Idiots. My name is Bill Zam. Thank you so much for watching the show and listening to my ranting and raving, and hopefully it clears up some of the issues. The show notes will be up on freedomtalkradio.net forthwith and practically immediately, and this video version of the show will also be up on YouTube shortly. My name is Bill Zam. Have a wonderful, wonderful Easter and a very, very good week. I hope everybody is doing well.